Hi, I'm Joe Jordan, and today what I want to talk to you about is when business becomes personal. A lot of the discussions I have talk about our impact on our clients, the fact that people can die too soon, they can live too long, and they can get sick and disabled. But you know what? Those risks are the very same risks we experience, those people who are in the business. And what I want to do is share with you two stories of people who happen to be in the business and the impact of the business upon them and their families' lives. The first is Darren Elmer. Darren is up in Canada. He's with Sun Life, and he was being very successful, and he was about 42 years of age when he was diagnosed to have cancer. And this was, of course, was very disruptive to his family. But one of the things that he did is he made certain that he had a critical illness policy. And because he was in the business, he felt it important that, you know what, in order to be believed, you have to believe, so I better get this myself. But he had no idea that he would ever need it. Of course, he was out of work for a long period of time. He also had to go through chemotherapy and all of those things that are there. In fact, Darren was on the main platform of $1 Million Roundtable in 2014, and he had his program was titled A Letter to Santa. His little girl, Hannah, wrote a letter to Santa Claus and said, "The most important thing that I want for this Christmas is to have my daddy feel better." Darren's wife intercepted it, and it was a big emotional thing and crisis for the family. But what he talks about was the fact that he went through all of this therapy. He couldn't work for a long time, but the critical illness policy paid him enough money up front where they could stay in their own world, that their expenses were taken care of, they didn't have to move out of the house, they were able to buy the different medications that he was requiring, which cost an awful lot of money, and also other accoutrements that he required when he recovered when he went home. And he talked about what it would be like had he not had those. His belief mechanism has gone up dramatically when it relates to the idea of our business. The second story is with John Juris. John is with Investors Group. He was a very robust guy. He was a football player. He didn't think anything would happen to him. And one of the things that happened, his wife happens to be in the business. They're both in the business, okay? And what Janice did was to make certain that he bought a $100,000 critical illness policy. Of course, neither one of them ever thought they needed it. And one time he was driving, and he felt a strange tingling in his foot. And what happened is he pulled the car over, and he got out, and he fell down. And he says, you know, what is wrong with me? But interestingly enough, for the most part, he always drives home alone. He happened to have his assistant there. She got him back in the car, and he talks about the interesting thing that usually the lights, it's hard to catch the lights, so you're hitting red light after red light. They all seem to be green, and they got to the hospital. So when he gets there, he's saying, you know, when can I play golf and get back to work? And the doctor said, you just had a stroke, and that's a major issue, and that was a big shock. The key here was that with having the critical illness policy, that paid enough money so that they had the ability to stay in their world. They didn't have to worry about the house. They were able to get medications and the other things long enough for him to be able to rehabilitate himself. And he's in the business just like Darren. Here's the point. These are the types of stories that we have to begin to focus on. I'm not saying go out and I get a stroke, but I am saying use this story. We really need to start incorporating the fact that we do something significant and worthwhile. We are subjected, as we said, to the same foibles that all of our clients are. And when it hits home, it's really a big deal. The other thing that I think is important is, notice I was talking about critical illness. We don't sell enough of it in the United States. And you know what? We've protected pretty much when people, you know, either die too soon. We are getting better about living too long because we're beginning to focus in on mortality credits and the annuity factor. But one of the things that we really have to begin to look at is this idea of critical illness. I think it's important. I think it's very important because it's especially those who are living a good life and are on their way, all of a sudden something happens to them. And you know what? It can happen to us. The other thing that's important is, notice I'm relating this in a story. I'm not giving you a stat or anything like that. What is good is these types of stories you can use, even though it didn't happen in your personal life. Let me tell you a story about someone who was a robust guy, played football, and had this injury. The other person having cancer. So that's why these stories are important, and it's important we begin to get back to the basics and incorporate it in the way we view what we do.